Good morning, everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and call the Transportation Policy Committee to order. And how's everybody doing?
Good.
How was your Thanksgiving? Oh, I just wanted to make sure you were awake. All righty, I do believe, and looking at everyone, we do have a quorum. And those of you who have the agenda booklets, I trust that you have reviewed the safety procedures and you feel relatively safe. Just recognize this is a smaller place, so it'll be more difficult to run out of, and so many of us. All righty.
Two different
Voluntary.
fast one.
Next item, any public comment? Anyone here wishing to speak as a citizen, make any comment? I don't see anyone. We also want to welcome, yes, sir, Mr. Jones.
We want to introduce our new employee.
Oh,
Mic on? Is your mic on?
Push the green button.
Still not
Just
on.
like I said, told everybody else.
And
We want to
And bid the
introduce
day.
our new employee, Ayla Ryan. Stand up, wave.
Welcome, welcome. Would you like to have words?
Sure. My name's Ayla Ryan. I'm a master's student at Tech and new planner here, part-time for now, and I'm happy to be here.
So glad to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All righty. Next is our approval of our August 15th, 2023 minutes from that meeting. If I can receive a motion for approval.
I'll motion also.
Okay. I believe we had a motion from Mr. Kovar and second from Judge Parrish. All those in favor of approvals by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Those minutes have been approved. Our next item is to take appropriate action regarding certain functional classification recommendations that are being made by the TPC, I'm sorry, not TPA, TPC. Alrighty.
All right,
Mr. Lucero, thank you. Good to see you.
I'm gonna
Get
start
your
off
mic.
here. I'm gonna start off here and then move to the back, so. So, thank you. It's good to see everyone again.
Good to see you.
We're just gonna hit some highlights here for functional classification. As many of you know, regional functional classification is based off the federal classification, and then we do have local classification roadways based off the local general plans, the local roadway plans, and both have their purposes and both have their reasoning behind them. But for the most part, we try to keep each one merged together so that way one speaks to the other. But some differences may include some additional classifications on the local side to give you a little bit more granular idea and be able to utilize it for your local purposes, and that's completely fine. And then some other things also is that the federal classification really stops right at the arterial roadway. Sometimes we go down to the collector roadway system for the rural areas, but we don't take a look really at the local roadway system. And so the local roadway system, the collector roadway system, those are on the local plans. We take a look at those, but we really don't take a look at changing those classifications unless they grow up to be a bigger road. Some of the differences there, again, are just the regional classifications are set up a little bit higher. We go down to opportunities to be able to take a look at how changes may be reflected on the regional side based off the local needs. And then if there is a change that needs to be required either by TxDOT, FHWA, the NPO, or the local regional areas, we all get together and we discuss those. And in order to be able to discuss those, we take a look at the 1, 2, 3, 4 method. We take a look at the intersections, making sure that all the roadways that are coming in make sense into that intersection. We take a look at the boundary, trying to make sure who owns the roadway, who has control of it, who does the maintenance. And then we make sure that any functional classification roadway does not go into a dead end. So if it goes into a dead end, what is that roadway really doing? And then there are some exceptions, and some of those exceptions may include dead ends, where a good example of that would be Quaker. When you go take Quaker North, it dead ends into the 289. That's a highway, state highway designation. In that case, Quaker would still be a major arterial. The only reason why it dead ends into a state facility, and so we just leave that one alone. That one's correct, and we move forward. And so in this case, we've had TxDOT ask us for a classification change for a roadway that's needed, and I'm going to move back to the screen, and then we'll move from there. So if you take a look here, South Loop 493 releases just before Woodrow Road. When you're taking a look at Woodrow Road, the reason why most of the individuals are exiting here is for the high school. And then so we took a look at those traffic counts. Currently right now it's classified as a local road, functional classification 7. However, when you take a look at those ADTs, or the average annual daily traffic volumes on those, on a daily basis when school's in, it's running about 4,000 vehicles. And for a lot of you, you might ask, what does that really mean? Well, the frontage road along US 87 and 82nd Street runs about, 3,200 vehicles a day. Between 23 and 3,200 vehicles a day. So that means this section of South Loop 493 is running about 1,700 more vehicles a day. So really, it's not functioning as a local road. It's really functioning more as a Class 5 road, which in this case would be a frontage road to that freeway. And so those individuals who are exiting to go to the high school. They come back up, they use the frontage road to be able to get back up onto 87 to go either north or south. And so in this case, that's the change that we're going to be asking for TxDOT as well as the federal classification to be changed on the federal side. And so in this case, TxDOT's request makes sense. We took a look at their map and we concur after taking a look at some items. Based off of that, the county has also done some homework, and the county has provided us with 2 sets of maps and 34 classification changes. And some of these classification changes are based because the name was wrong. And so on the state planning map, the name was one thing. On the county state map, it's another. And so because of that, there was some confusion on really what that classification should have been in essence. And so we're taking a look at roads that go in from like the state facility off of Clovis Highway, and it comes all the way down to 4th Street, which is a major arterial. Those two classifications, even though it dead ends at both those facilities, would require that if this roadway has enough volume, it too should be classified. And so in each one of these instances, the county has asked for those roadways to be classified at the lowest tier of a minor collector. They all meet volume, and for the most part, they all dead end into larger facilities. And so the classification change that they're requesting makes sense. The volumes make sense. And so in this instance, 20 through 34 up in the North County, all should be changed to a minor collector. All the names should be corrected to the county system name, and this will be added into a batch request into the county. Now, one thing I do want to mention is we're not approving any changes today. These are just being brought to you for your attention to be able to take a look, to verify, and then we'll bring these back in October with the resolution and actually having an opportunity to be able to reach out to our federal partners or state partners and here at the MPO for your approval. And so this is just your first chance to take a look at that. You have the spreadsheet in front of you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those here in a second. So if we go on to the south, when you take a look at the south, a lot of these roadways are doing a similar thing. They're connected in where expansion has occurred, and the roadway has now linked up to the next major roadway facility. And so when you have the bookends occurring, it makes sense to be able to make that change and be able to increase that classification if the volumes are there and if the roadway facility looks appropriate. And so in these cases, again, we have some nomenclature that we have to clean up based off the state system and the county nomenclature. We'd like to make sure that our local plans and our regional plans all speak together and that we know which road is which. We have our from tos, and then all these roadways, again, are being asked to only be raised to the lowest or federally classified rural classification of a minor collector. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. And we do have the county here as well if we need any additional information.
Thank you, Mr. Lucero. Are there any questions by any of the committee members this morning? If not, I have a question, and I hope it's not a silly question, but it's on my mind. Are there any additional benefits to the reclassification of a lot of these roads?
So that's a great question. And in this case, since all these were local classifications to begin with, the county could never have applied for federal funding to improve any of these roadways because they don't meet the federal classification. In the rural area, minor collectors are federally classified and are a eligible roadway for funding. In the urban area, minor collectors aren't. You would have to get up to a major collector or a minor arterial. So in this case, for the county, it is a benefit. They do have the opportunity now, once these roadways get corrected in the system by nomenclature as well as federal classification, if need be, they could apply in the future for federal funding if they did so choose to do. As far as the TxDOT facility, it's the exact same way. For that South Loop 493, it is classified currently as a local roadway, and so it would never have been eligible for federal funding, but now it would be.
Thank you. I'm glad you shared that because I was thinking money too. So I'm glad to know that. Any additional questions or comments? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not a problem. Adding on to that really quickly, we will have an opportunity for all our member agencies after this next presentation, I'll indicate why, to be able to review all your roadway classifications, and if there's any new roadways that weren't classified appropriately or they have been expanded to that next logical location, that we can seek to do the exact same thing if need be and if they qualify.
Again, anyone else? And this will come back to us in the form of a resolution, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone in opposition of this information? I hadn't think why we would be, but thank you so much, Mrs. Lucero. I guess you're up again for the next item. This we will actually have to take a quick.
Can I just ask
You
one
sure
quick
may.
question?
You sure may.
Okay, so all these this is really more of a renaming thing more than anything, and then moving these to become minor collectors to allow the county to apply. But I'm looking at some of these, I mean, there's been some recent annexation, but some of these are now in the city. So would that change the name of them? I mean, obviously, if it's not a county road, but it's in the city, and then would the city also qualify for the federal funds to work on this?
Correct. In that case, yes, we would change them. The one thing that we do have that's a little kind of interesting here is, I'm trying to get to the right map, sorry. So in this case, if you take a look, the city boundary on this for the state planning map is from 2018. And so we need to change that city boundary to be the current city boundary. And so that will be a submission that we should be making here shortly. And so normally what those submissions are done by the local agency to the state to be able to show that an annexation has occurred. Currently, right now, I believe the county is taking a look at some of those annexations and trying to submit those on behalf of the county for those local agencies.
Thank you, Judge Parrish, for bringing that up. It really is important. Anyone else? Mr. Warren?
I would just point out this is a standard procedure that occurs after every census, that we look at all of our functional classifications, and there may be roads that are classified as collectors that may need to be elevated to arterials or maybe be downgraded from an arterial unit. It just depends. We're going to do this district-wide as well, and it is a federal requirement after every census that we go in and look at all our functional classifications. And I would advise everybody, just because it makes them eligible for federal funding, does not make our federal funding go up. So, it's just more hands in the pot. So.
Thank you for that information. This is my first MPO, after a census. So, thanks for that information. I'm learning quite a bit here. Anyone else? Anything else? Mr. Atkinson, any comments or?
Just would note, as Margaret said, the city limits from 18 to today are dramatically different. Off the top of my head, 8,000-ish acres that have been added. So,
Alrighty, we're moving to the next item. We're going to discuss, take appropriate action regarding the analysis application and in reference to the urbanized boundary adjustments. Mr. Lucero.
So about 4 months ago, we had a good discussion about what was coming up because of the census on the urban areas and our urbanized boundary. If you remember about 4 months ago, we gave you all the rules and the reasoning behind why we had to take a look at it. I just placed those on the side for you to, just as a reminder. I'm not going to go over those again unless there's a specific question. However, we did present this map to you. And so as you take a look here, if you remember, the green was supposed to be the Lubbock UZA. There was a shallow water UZA that was in the purple hatch, and in the south there was a Slayton UZA that was in the hatch. I'm going to come up to the screen and I'm going to point to a couple of differences here in a second. Since that last meeting that we had, we were informed that shallow water UZA was no longer a shallow water UZA, that the census had gone back and amended their UZAs to include the shallow water into the Lubbock UZA. And so now it's become one UZA, and the federal government, as well as the state, has requested us to change this hatch purple to a green, in essence. And so we'll show you that in a second. They also indicated there that that we have Slayton, and that Slayton UZA is still in force. And so the only difference here between what happened in April and what we're bringing to today is that these two have been combined into one UZA. Much like we have with the city of Wolfforth, they're part of the Lubbock UZA. And so we were thinking about that, we're getting ready to make that change, and then we had a discussion with TxDOT as well as with the federal agencies, and we had a good conversation on what they considered to have been urban versus what they consider to be rural. You have to remember though, this is based off the new rules that came out with the census. The new census rules no longer base it off of population, but based off of density. And based off the density, they gave us their suggestions. And so we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is the map that they provided. And I'm gonna I know it's not the same coloration, we'll bring that next month back to you with appropriate coloration to be able to help go apples to apples. But as you can kind of see, we have shallow water up here. They're bringing it across from shallow water all the way out to the county line. They agreed that we need to go out to the county line. They're bringing it back down. And then just before we hit Reese, they bring it back over to Reese, cut back down. They cut underneath the city of Wolfforth. And then we kind of jig-jag back all the way down, but we never make it back down to about 130. We fall short of that. And the reason being is because of that density requirement. And so what you're seeing here is the green portion that we had suggested as being urban, they did not agree with us based off the 2020 aerials and based off of the new requirements set by the census. And so we went ahead and we made our arguments. We were able to pull down in some areas, stretch it out as much as we could. But this is as good of a discussion and agreement that we could get from them. Based off of here, though, there's the US 84. When you zoom in really super close to it, you see that it turns green. It becomes our UZA. All the way till you hit shallow water. Once you hit shallow water, once you hit Slayton, then it becomes the Slayton UZA. And so US 84 all the way down to Slayton is part of the Lubbock UZA. It's abandoned on either side of the right-of-way. And so in the future, as that expands and becomes denser with more population, more freight, and commercial uses, that boundary will in turn expand as well in future census opportunities, as long as the rules don't change. All right? And so when we're taking a look at this, that really then comes down to what's next. And I'll give you what's next. 4 months ago, we indicated there, based off the timeline, we anticipated a call for review of these coming out from the state. We also anticipated that they needed this information before October. The call for the state came out last Friday. And all the other censuses, all the other MPOs were put on notice that they have 2 weeks to do what we have done in the past 4 months. And so a lot of them are scrambling right now. Luckily for us, we've already done our review. We've already sat down with the state and we've already done our arguments. And so we could go ahead and nod and accept this and come in consensus with them. Or if we wait past October 18th, it'll go back down to the red hatch and default to the census information. And so if we did that, then our urbanized area, planning area, will just dramatically shrink. And I take that back, it's not planning area. It's the UZA will dramatically shrink, the urbanized area. The planning area is our next discussion. So based off of that, we did have a little conversation with them after we got them to nod and agree with this. And we had the discussion that we wanted to expand our planning area to include all 5 counties. When we had that discussion, they asked, well, let's take care of the urbanized area, and then we'll come back and have a discussion. As you can kind of see, they were wondering why we would want to do that when there's only 2 other urbanized areas in the other 5 counties. And when we had that discussion, we said, okay, based off this information, you would be correct. These other 2 counties, Crosby and Lynn, really don't have the population to support an MPO kind of planning area. But because of the freight movement, if you remember, we had discussed the freight movement, all that freight movement and all the interaction between those 4 additional counties and Lubbock County all intermingle. And so they reviewed that information, they agreed with that information, and they were all in concurrence with it. And so in essence, really, this is what we're going to come back to you in October to recommend to go back to the state as well as the federal government. Everybody understands that there is some additional outreach that we have to make to those county seats, which we'll be making here this coming month. But with that, they also understood that the freight movements were correct and that they all point back into Lubbock, and so that interaction with the MPO should occur. And so in the future, if our planning boundary area expands, the next census, we would be doing a smoothing for the other UZAs that are outside. Currently, right now, though, the state will do that on their behalf. And so, based off of that, I'd be happy to stand for any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lucero. Are there any questions or further discussion? Mr. Ward?
I understand the game we have to play to continue moving forward, but this map makes no sense. They're trying to tell us the area between Shallow-Water and Reese is more densely populated than that south of Wolford. There's like 4 houses out there. 5. Oh, I forgot they built a new one. So I'm tempted to vote against recommending this, but I don't want to hold up our planning activities. So just want to go on the record that this map makes absolutely no sense. It's forced on us.
Is it negotiable in any way?
So if we were to go back with them, we would have to set up another meeting, and then we would have to come back for a consensus and then a resolution by our governing board, which is you. You are the MPO. And then we would have to make sure we did all that before October 18th. And so it would be a really tight timeline. If you asked us to do so, we would have to go ahead and start advertising now. We would get on the phone and do what we needed to do as staff. But we had a really, a polite but very, animated conversation in some instances to be able to kind of go back to where we were on the original map. So the original map as you can kind of see, that's what we were thinking, because it states anything that is anticipated to be urban in 20 years. Well, everybody in this room knows how Lubbock is growing, and the city of Wolfworth and in this region. We're stretching, and it's a race to see if we cross Hockley or Lynn County first, in all essence. And we can take bets afterwards. But in 20 years, the city of Lubbock is going to stretch, and it's going to hit one of those county lines. And so, in essence, you're right. Is it more dense heading south than it is going west? Currently, right now, it is. But based off of how the census did their tracks, and that's the biggest thing, that these are based off the census tracks. And the census tract heading south is one huge piece. And so this next census, we need to evaluate that and make a suggestion for that tract to be broken up into smaller blocks. And so the block that was headed west had the benefit of being broken up by the shallow water census tract to the north. And because of that, it allowed that density to reach the critical point a lot sooner than the ones to the south of it.
This map appears to be much more reflective of what's on the ground,
Correct. And
But
so
the feds disagree
but we
with
can't
that.
use it
correct.
because they looked at Google Earth.
Correct. So in essence, the good thing about it is the UZA is just a UZA. It helps classify the urban roads from the rural roads, in essence. But the planning area boundary is what the MPO actually plans for. And so based off of this, if we expand out to all sides of Lubbock County, then that would include all these roads within our planning jurisdiction. If we expand out to all 5 counties, like I was asking and pointing out to and recommending earlier, then it would allow us to be able to take a look at the full stretch and be able to then help bring that planning process to all the rural roadways that come in and bring in infrastructure into the Lubbock area.
Any other questions or further discussion? Hearing none, if you'll just follow in order and let us know whether or not you are in agreement with accepting and supporting the text recommendation, with the exception of Mr. Ward.
He's just gonna whine.
Me, against the district recommendation.
There's no choice, is there?
That's what it sounds like. You hate to impede any type of planning
Right,
on this,
yeah.
but I think Mr. Will's comments are duly noted.
Anyone else? And with all of that being said, there is a consensus and we are moving forward with supporting this recommendation.
And we will be bringing it back next month with the resolution.
On the 18th, is that correct?
Consensus or whatever.
And you'll bring back any additional information if
Correct.
it comes to be. Okay. Thank you so much. Now we're on item number 8, looking at and taking action with the forecast of 2045. Mr. David Jones, good morning to you.
Good morning. As I wrote in your agenda backup, we were well on our way to finish an update of our long-range plan last year when we went through all the COVID slowdown and such. Point being, we just didn't get our plan done on time, and now we're being called to task. Not only that, but one of our most important planning tools was not ready either, and that's our travel demand model. But now we have a new model, and it's working perfectly. We're very satisfied with it. You've seen it. FHWA was checking their books the other day and noticed that we didn't satisfy our 22 planning requirement, so they're calling our hand. So what I'm asking you to do is, as we have done one time before, pursuant to the resolution that's in your backup, if you would reapprove our 2017-2040 plan to the forecast year of 2045, we'll move that forward once again into the next time slot, which will be an approval year of 2026 with a forecast year of 2050. That is the current model we have, in hand. And if we do that, then we'll fill in that box, and hopefully we'll be able to move on down the road and get our long-range plan updated. So in essence, that's what we're asking with this resolution.
Any questions or discussion from any of the members? Mr. Massinger?
I don't plan on being here in 2050.
I get
Yeah,
it.
but your kids.
Anyone else? Dr. Wilson?
Move to approve.
Thank you. A motion from Mr. Warren. For a second.
Second.
Mr. Atkinson. I will call for the vote. All those in favor for approving resolution 2023-14, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
We move forward. Thank you. All right. The next item is really new to me in sitting in this position, and I have to admit that I really didn't pay a whole bunch of attention to the previous chairs. But we're going to be conducting the annual performance evaluation for our executive director, Mr. Jones. And of course, the way it's set up, that Mr. Jones is recognized as an independent contractor, and that's kind of how we have handled everything. Does anyone needing additional information to review the duties and the agreement that is actually on hand? And also attach a planning agreement.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry, I think the only comment I would make about this is I do believe that Mr. Jones has well fulfilled his executive duties and responsibilities. I'm looking over all the bullet points here, and I can go down the list and say, yes, he's done that. Yes, he's done that. Yes, he's done that. So I would like to publicly thank Mr. Jones for being diligent in his executive duties and moving this MPO over the years into what I consider to be a very good position. So as director, thank you, Mr. Jones.
Mr. Massingill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll concur with Judge Parrish. I appreciate the trust and confidence we all have in Mr. Jones as we know the MPO moves forward. And although this doesn't, your 10 reasonably prudent people on the streets probably couldn't tell you what the MPO is. This is important work. And so I appreciate what you've done, appreciate the job you do, Mr. Jones.
Comments? Mr. Ward?
I'd also like to note that the reports section of this meeting has gotten much shorter. Much appreciated.
You must not have looked at the.
I don't know what's going
You didn't
on.
that came out this time.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyone else?
I wrote all that.
Mr. Atkinson, anyone?
Agree with what's been said.
Yeah, I'll just concur. I think for our processes and what we do, David's done a fantastic job. So really appreciate the work. Another successful year.
I'd like to take this time to say a huge thank you to Mr. Jones, especially, particularly since I've been serving as chair, kind of taking my hand and really giving me a deeper dive into some of the information that I may not necessarily have done outside of this. So I appreciate the time that you and Mr. Lucero have been taking with me, so that I'm able to gather a little bit more.
Well, let me say, in something close to 50-odd years of service, I've never had more fun than I've had with this job right here.
Thank you so much.
That's sad.
Sometimes the truth hurts. All righty, with that, I believe we'll move to the next item on the agenda. And at this point, we're to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2023-13, authorizing a one-year extension of professional services from Mr. Jones. I did receive a letter from Mr. Jones indicating that, serving notice that he is desired to extend his agreement for, I believe, an additional year. So I really appreciate that and appreciate some of the things that you have been doing each year that you continue to work with us. I mean, having Mr. Lucero brought on board is, I tell you what. And then our new staff, is there an additional staff member coming as well? Okay.
Yes, we're still trying to hire one more to replace Daryl.
Okay. So I tell you, with all those things, I noticed a huge impact of some of the information that's being provided additionally and all of that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that you are willing to extend and deal with us yet one more year. Yes, sir. I believe we have to ask for a motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move that we approve the resolution that authorizes the extension of Houston David Jones's contract.
Thank you, Judge Parrish, for that motion. Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mandrell. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor for accepting the resolution with regard to Mr. Jones' additional year of extension, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. You are with us yet another year, Mr. Jones.
Thank you.
You have with me 8 months and some change. All righty. The next item, number 11, to discuss and take appropriate action regarding Resolution 2023-12, authorizing, I can't ever say this word, emolument.
That's it.
That's it. Emolument adjustments for the executive director. Thank you. All righty. I don't have a whole lot to say, but I will call for any discussions on this item by any of the members of the committee.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion to adjust the compensation for the contract related to Mr. Jones by 4%, which would be an increase of $5,231.20 for a total ending amount of $136.11.20.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir. Mr. Warren.
I assume all of you received the spreadsheet that Mr. Jones sent out regarding comparisons between other TMAs in the state. And I feel that although what he was asking for might be a bit excessive, I'm not convinced 4% is enough. And can I ask you a couple of questions regarding that? Because I'm a little confused on the difference between, say, the Laredo MPO and the Lubbock MPO. Your salary or your pay at $130-something thousand, because that does not include benefits, correct?
The way my agreement is structured, I am paid lump sum. And I buy my own benefits, I pay my own taxes, pay my own expenses. So out of that lump sum, according to the resolution, you break the lump sum down into salary and benefits.
So when you say lump sum and you pay for your own insurance and retirement or whatever, is that out of that $130,000 number?
Yes.
That's pretty low, folks. That's the point I'm trying to make. I would, make sure, Matt, I'm not getting out of line here. I would offer an amendment to the motion to go to $160,000.
Mr. Mayfield?
So you need to have either the person who made the first motion agree to it, whether it's a friendly amendment, and if he doesn't agree to it, you have a second to your amendment.
Mr. Messenger?
I do not accept the suggestion of the amendment.
Go ahead, Mr. Warren.
Motion, I'll call for a second on my motion.
Mr. Warren has offered a motion to increase the compensation to 160. He has called it and is looking for a second to his motion. Is there one?
It dies for lack of a second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, I don't know if this is appropriate at this point or not, but thought that the chair and I had not had a chance to speak on this at all. It was brought to us about a week ago, so we hadn't had a chance to really discuss this. And so didn't know if there was the appetite of the committee to maybe move forward with the execution of the contract. Maybe we give the 4% now increase, and then that'll give her and I time to talk and maybe negotiate with Mr. Jones and then bring back another recommendation next month. Happy to do that if that's the so the motion on the table, and that's been seconded in the discussion that is going on, is regarding 4%. If at any time this board or Mr. Jones wants to change it again in the future, they can do so. You can put it on the agenda and you can have another amendment to the agreement at any time if y'all so choose. The other option would be, if you don't want to take action, if Mr. Mandrill, if you don't want to take action or don't think it's appropriate to take action because you haven't had a discussion, then the appropriate motion would be to table it until the next policy committee meeting. The same as Mr. Warren's motion, you would need to get the consent of the original movant. And if you don't get that consent, then we would move forward with the motion on the table.
This is the start date of the amendment, 10-1.
Mr. Atkinson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Matt. Would just note we've approved a contract that starts on 10-1. So
Yeah, this is.
it does need to start with emolument as it's worded here. So what may come next, but let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, you've already extended the contract. That's that action's been finished. So this is, and you could, if you so chose, you could, depending on whether you table it or not, you could actually at your next meeting sit there and say that it would be retroactive to if it's past 10-1, or you could start it on a different date. It would all depend on what the board and Mr. Jones would agree to.
So, Mr. Mandrill, are you looking to visit with Mr. Massengill, accepting your motion to maybe further discuss it until next, make a decision possibly next meeting?
Yeah, I just was, we can move forward with the recommendation there, and then that'll give us an opportunity to continue to work with Mr. Jones and negotiate the contract if that were the appetite of the board here.
Sounds like that the board could take that up at any point in time. If I could just offer a couple things.
Mr. Massengill?
Grateful for Mr. Jones and the information he sent, but was able to obtain some more information. And if you took the MPOs that were 30% larger than us and 30% smaller than us, the median salary is $112,000, the average is $119,000. If you were to take the entities between 200,000 and 900,000 population, the median is 122,000, and the average is about just shy of 129,000, which tells me the 4% is appropriate. That would take into the 136. And, you know, I would just say a couple of other things. One is keep in mind that probably all these other people, and I think that was some of the point that was trying to be made, that they are an employee relationship. We're actually considering a contract here, which is different. This board could actually convene an executive session if we were discussing a personnel contract. So there's the basis for my amendment.
Did you give Mr. Mandrell an answer?
I don't think he was suggesting a motion or an amendment. I think he was just making a comment, unless I misunderstood that.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, if we wanted to make that motion so that we could have that discussion with Mr. Jones to negotiate that, I'm okay with the 4%, but if we, you know, I heard Mr. Warren, you know, suggest higher, so again, that would just give us an opportunity to have that discussion with Mr. Jones, if there's, you know, if it may end up being 4%, it may be more than that, but just the discussion, because we really hadn't had a chance to have that discussion. I feel like on that contract, we, you know, would be able to negotiate that and figure out where that comes from. So just a thought, if not, then I mean, I'm happy with the motion that's on the floor, but we also would appreciate, you know, the opportunity to take the lead and negotiate that.
Mr. Ware, does that require a motion?
Well, then, I think like Mr. Mexico said, it doesn't sound like Mr. Mandrell's making a motion. I understand what he's wanting to do, but unless I've misunderstood Mr. Mandrell, you're comfortable with the motion that's on the floor, but you want the opportunity, and you certainly can talk to Mr. Jones anytime between now and the next policy meeting, or anytime really, if you want to sit there and see if there's something that you would like to bring back to the policy committee. Essentially what would happen, assuming that the motion passes, you would set the floor at 4%. And then whether the committee decides to sit there and do anything greater than 4% at a future date would be up to the committee. So am I understanding? In other words, if you don't want to take any action today, then the appropriate motion for you would be to table this particular agenda item to a future meeting. If you think you ought to, if you're like, no, let's go ahead and move on the 4%, then you don't need to say anything else, and you can do whatever you want to with Mr. Jones and discuss. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I guess I'll just make this a little bit easier for everybody around the table. I'll make a motion that we give the 4% for now, and then allow the chair and I time to negotiate with Mr. Jones over the next couple weeks and see if there's any other common ground we come to on that.
I'm not sure that's any different than the
No.
motion that's on the floor,
Okay.
because you can do that anyway. I mean, you don't need the policy committee's approval to be able to go talk to Mr. Jones about that. So,
Sorry to do with this.
yeah, no, you're completely good.
May I ask a question? If that is Mr. Mandrell's desire, is that something that will have to come as an item at the next meeting?
If he desires to sit there and do something beyond what action is taken for the policy committee today, then yes, you would have to bring something else back to, I mean, assuming a salary adjustment or a contract adjustment, I should say, then you would have to bring that back to the policy committee.
Mr. Judge Parrish, I'm sorry.
Um,
Mike
I-
Buddy?
That's okay. I did, I seconded the motion, and I agree with the 4%. But I do not want my second and my vote to reflect what I think that you are worth. Your value to this community is well above your $136,000. I think if it were in everybody's power, we would give you a lot more. In fact, I would double it. I don't think that that's feasible and prudent for us to be good stewards of the people's money. But I do not want my second or my vote to reflect what I think you're worth. I think this is just the reality of the salary structure that we are at in Lubbock, Texas, and that's it, David. It means nothing more than that. You are far more valuable than any coins that we could throw your way.
I appreciate that, Judge. I just want you to know I'm Proud to be here and I'm at this board's pleasure.
Mr. Baskerville?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Well said, Judge. And I agree with the judge, by the way, and I know I think that's why I made the comment about executive session, because discussing someone's compensation via contract in open session is difficult. And I know that it's probably difficult for Mr. Jones, but at the end of the day, we're charged with spending other people's money, and we have to take that very seriously. And I'll add on to that, but I think I've explained where I'm at on it. So.
Anyone else, any further discussion? If there's none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the resolution 2023-12 with the adjustment of 4% to Mr. Jones's current compensation, which will make it a $136,011. And I'll ask all of those in favor for this approval.
Madam Chair, hang on, we're looking at the contract here. I apologize that.
I don't think it's.
I wanted to, Mr. Axon, do you think I need to, or you want to?
We need to crack at it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Atkins.
There's some other language in here we may need to address.
Yeah. Matt, I presume you may have the 17th Amendment of Contract
I do,
in front of you.
I do.
So, Mr. Massengill, Judge Parrish, with the motion today and the second, I believe what we're talking about is where the amendment references the first full paragraph of Section 3 is deleted in its entirety and replaced with the following. The current language there is not what the motion on the floor is. The proposed language is not what's on the floor. So would the motion properly be to replace what is on the 17th Amendment of Contract with current salary plus 4% for the agreement?
Okay. You're separated in that fashion.
Yeah, no, I understand the motion, and the 4%. You can word it that way, certainly. Or we could put strike the $139,966.41 to $136,011 on the total compensation.
And then strike the remainder where the
Strike the
50,000 is listed.
For the per annum plus an amount annually in lieu of fringe benefits that would otherwise in order to a person employed equal to $50,671. Is that something on top of your so?
That's the benefit package,
Right,
not the salary.
right. So all we're talking about and all you've requested at this point in time is the salary. Or all that's been talked about up to this point in time is just the salary. So the remainder of that would remain the same.
Okay,
Right.
I think we just
Do we
clarification on
understand?
the intent of the motion there.
Yeah.
And
So you
that
still have-
encapsulates the modification and the
Right.
compensation in its entirety.
There would still be $50,671.59 that would still be in benefits on top of the $136,011.
Yes.
That's the way the compensation's been all along
Okay.
in the previous amendments.
Is that,
Is the 50,000 amount what's been in the prior? Do we have number 16? Maybe that would
Yes,
be-
I do have
that would be
number
helpful.
16. Let me pull up number 16. It would have been okay, instead of doing 17 amendments, we could have done a new agreement at some point in time.
Just cut and paste it, Council.
I'm getting to the 16th. Okay, I'm going to read to you so that we're all clear. This is what the 16th, the 50,000 actually is different than what the 16th Amendment is. So this is the 16th Amendment.
That is, usually what I do is it breaks up into salary and fringe benefits, so I do the 4% on each, or the 3% or whatever the case may
Okay,
be.
so you,
So it does change,
so you applied the percentage that was requested by Mr. Jones to both the
Yes.
fringe benefits and, so.
and his salary, and it's
Okay.
broken up that way.
So here's what the 16th Amendment said originally. The executive shall receive a total compensation package of $96,023, that's $96,023.63 per annum, plus an amount equal in lieu of fringe benefits that would otherwise inure to the person employed by an MPO's executive director, equal to $34,756.44. So, it's a good catch, Mr. Atkinson and Mr. Massengale. So the 4%, if you're going to approve the 4%, you can apply it to both, or you can apply it to just one. Okay, there's your motion for both.
I think so. So now what we're talking about is you take the original language from the 16th, and this is just clarification of my motion, and apply that to both, which should result in, if my math's correct, according to the spreadsheet, $136,011 in totality between the two figures. Does that make sense?
Okay, so including the fringe, inclusive of the fringe benefits, it would be $136,000.
That's right. That's my, yeah. My
So
So
motion-
raise both sides by 4%.
That's right.
Gotcha. Okay. I understand what you're doing. And we'll split it, and we can split it between those two.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yes. Does that make sense, Mr.
Yes, I concur.
Judge Parrish?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
My apologies, Madam Chair.
No problem at all. So I was corrected with just the total number.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'll take up where I left off for $136,011. Will be the adjustment. All of those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All righty, we have a continuation of Mr. Jones and a change in his compensation as well. All right. Let's see. Now, Mr. Jones, that takes you to our reports for today.
Try to run through this quickly for Mr. Warren's benefit. On page 53 is a copy of a joint letter to the House of Representatives that was authored by the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, the National Association of Counties, the National Association of Development Organizations, the National Association of Regional Councils, and the National League of Cities, underscoring their collective commitment to the planning and programming of federal highway and transit investments that are contained in the new bill, and requesting full funding through the 5-year span of that surface transportation bill. And that's basically the takeaway, the full funding. Then on page 55 is an article that is talking about the Austin I-35 expansion project. You recall the commission allocated some $4.5 billion for that expansion. It has finally gotten federal approval. All the environmental impact statements have been approved. It will widen I-35 from US 290 east to Ben White Boulevard. It's called the Capital Express Central. It's slated for completion sometime in 2032. It'll add 2 lanes either side, both directions, north and south, on I-35, and 2 non-tolled HOV lanes in the same location. There are still several advocacy groups in the Austin area protesting against TxDOT, saying that they totally ignored all the public outcry to completely stop that project. Then on page 57 is an article talking about the continual conversation at some federal and state levels about a San Antonio, Austin mega MPO. And you've got two handouts at each of your places. This lighter blue purplish handout is a work from not your friendly MPO director, but it's actually your friendly state demographer that's pushing this ideology. You'll note one of his comments that he's made in public. By 2045, 53% of the population between San Antonio and Austin is expected to live within 5 miles of I-35. But then if you think back several years ago, and in fact it's still on the FHWA's website, they're talking about the mega MPO. If you look at your next map, the greenish one, this one, you'll see Houston is in the puzzle now. And so what the demographer is saying, and he's saying it's going to be in the next 15 or 20 years, that's going to be the golden triangle. That's going to be the next huge MPO. And if you remember, this is the first, this Texas legislature just passed, is the first legislature in a couple of years that there hadn't been a bill from somebody to change the population threshold for all MPOs. The proposal in the past has been to move that threshold up to 1 million, so that the MPO would be 1 million plus, and all the smaller MPOs would then become the children of the state DOTs. So the TxDOT would have to take care of all of those smaller MPOs. Moving on page 64 is an article about the Census Bureau creating a Census Advisory Committee for the 2030 census to discuss undercounts, data collection, data measurement, and targets. And the article contains a host of goals and ideas that the committee will review. And there is a link, if you're interested in knowing what the membership rules are, there's a link on page 65 that will get you to that information if you're interested in serving on that committee. And you've heard me say on a number of occasions how important the census is. This is your opportunity. This is your opportunity to participate in that decision-making process, as Martin was alluding to earlier today about the rule changes. This is where that rule change process begins. And if it's interesting to you, I would advise you to inquire and see about getting into that discussion process. Then on page 66 is an article on EVs and the new fee structure that became effective September the 1st, a $200 annual fee for registration and a $400 new purchase fee for a 2-year registration after 2023. And it's already, the rocks are already starting to fly. In fact, even here in our own community, we've had folks on TV interviewing saying that it's too much of a load on them. They just can't afford it. You know, why is the state doing that to all the EV people? And just in case you want to know, there are 764 or 765 electric vehicles registered in Lubbock today. Just FYI. Then on page 66 is a calendar announcing that we are going to start working on our 25-28 TIP with a call for projects. We have about 9 months now to deliver that TIP to the state. So we're going to start working on that. And then on page 68 and 69 is a Class 1 railroad commodities report that you can look at your leisure. Then on page 70 is a notice that has been sent out by our district regarding the travel survey that was discussed or presented to you at your last meeting. I just wanted you to see that announcement. And on page 71 is a link to an application for leadership positions in the National League of Cities. You have to meet certain eligibility requirements, but as a policy board member, you are eligible to serve on the National League of Cities if you have a desire to do that. Then on page 72 is our monthly financial report. You can see it's through July, which is the 83rd percentile. We are 91% collected on our revenue, and we are 72% on our expenses. And then lastly, you as a separate attachment with your agenda email, you had a report from TxDOT about the transportation bills that were approved by the 88 legislature. It's an interesting report, quite cumbersome, as you can see. But these are all the transportation bills and the general government bills that were passed by the legislature. And there's some interesting reading in there, so we thought you'd like to have that. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Warren, although the report list was longer, I think Mr. Jones went through it swiftly enough that you're probably pretty happy.
They only dozed off twice.
Thank you. Are there any comments or anything from anyone else? Nope, if not, we stand adjourned.
Thank you for your attendance. We know you're all busy. We appreciate you being here.